The island of Sodor is home to the Northwestern Railway, with engines of all shapes and sizes, working hard to deliver goods and passengers to their destinations. There are lines that run along the coast of the island serving the docks, the fishing villages, and the seaside towns. There are branch lines that run to the farms, and the quarries, and the ancient castles of the island's heartland. And then there is the main line, which runs all the way from Knapford on the west coast of the island to Vickerstown in the east, and continues over the Vickerstown Bridge, where it connects to the mainland and beyond.
The harbour on Edward Branch Line was bustling with activity. Ships arrived day and night to unload cargo. This meant more and more trucks were needed, and the sidings were soon crowded. Poor Edward found it difficult to stay organised. Any spare time he had was spent trying to tidy the trucks. Unfortunately, his priority was getting his own trains ready, so little progress was made. Bill and Ben tried to help when they brought their loads of clay, however it often ended up bickering about what truck should go where, and only made things worse. "You can't keep going on like this," remarked BoCo, as a weary Edward huffed into the junction. "I think it's about time we spoke to the Fat Controller about getting you help. The other engines are much too busy with their own work. I'll manage. Somehow." BoCo was unconvinced, but said no more. Later, BoCo brought passengers to Thomas's Junction. He was still thinking about Edward when his thoughts were interrupted by a cheerful ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. "You look worried, BoCo. What's wrong?" BoCo quickly explained about Edward and the harbour. "I know the feeling," sympathised Toby. "Back in my harbour days, you barely got a chance to rest your wheels. I miss it sometimes, though it's far from light work." "So it seems," muttered BoCo. "I wouldn't worry. Edward has the one thing that every harbour engine needs: experience. And I'm sure those trucks will be sorted by the next time you see him." But they weren't. Edward was busy elsewhere and hadn't been back to the harbour since the morning. BoCo took his goods down the line, but when he arrived at the harbour, he was shocked. Trucks were everywhere. They giggled and chatted noisily. BoCo frowned and moved forward to Bill and Ben, arguing furiously. "They go there." "No, they don't, Ben." "Why do you think they go there?" "Because they just do, Bill. You see, that's why I put them on that line." You let a truck tell you where to put it? You know they're untrustworthy," Bill squawked. "Seem more trustworthy than your instinct. You blocked the entire siding," retorted Ben. "Enough, both of you." The twins jumped, not having noticed BoCo arrived. "What on earth is going on here?" "I just wanted to help Edward," cried Bill. "By sitting around bickering," growled BoCo. "It's not our fault," Ben harumphed. "We've never dealt with this many trucks at the clay pits. Perhaps if Edward had passed on some of that, what's it called? Experience of his, we—" "Experience! That's it!" The twins stared at each other, then smiled. Whatever BoCo's idea was, it was good enough for them. That evening, Edward was bringing his last passenger train to the harbour. He was glad the day's work was done and eager to organise the yard. As he pulled into the harbour, though, he was quite surprised. All the trucks were tidily arranged. Sidings were clear and ships were hooting their horns in delight. And the workmen were in much better spirits. "How—" he began, when a familiar sight came into view. "Evening, Edward," smiled Toby. "I don't suppose you mind a little help from an old harbour engine, do you?" "Not at all," beamed Edward. "But how—" "BoCo spoke with the Fat Controller," explained Toby. "The others are handling my branch line trains while I look after the harbour for a few days. I must say, it's a relief to see you. I've been running ragged trying to keep everything in order." You leave this lot to me, Toby said, eyeing the trucks. I'll see to it that the harbour is well looked after. Toby was as good as his word. Edward and BoCo were able to focus on their regular duties. Toby had their trams ready in good time, and all the ships were kept to schedule. He even found time to teach Bill and Ben a few tricks. At last, the harbour grew quieter, and the workload was more manageable. All the engines came to see Toby off. The number 7 suits you, grinned BoCo. We're certainly lucky to have had your help. It's been my pleasure, Toby smiled. It put me back in mind of the old days. Although, he chuckled, it reminded me I'm not quite as young as I once was. I'm looking forward to a quiet run with Henrietta. At that moment, the signal dropped and Toby's path was clear. Goodbye, Toby. You're always welcome on our branch line, any time, Edward cheered.